The following is a little experiment about poetry. For my last presentation, I recorded myself reading a couple of works by Amiri Baraka. Later, after I had completed the assignment, I happened upon a video of Baraka reading one of the poems himself, and basically everything he could add to the poem by his reading, his tone and rhythm, were different from my own. So I was inspired to create a little experiment. I would read another poem by a different writer and compare my reading to the author's own. For the methodology, now it would have to be a writer for whom I had not previously heard any recordings and for whom recordings existed. For the first stipulation, I would not want to be influenced by the author, and so, for example, I could not reuse Amiri Baraka nor someone like Langston Hughes. The second requirement, to have the author read the work, limited me to mainly the last 100 years of works. Finally, I wanted to read a complete poem and compare the two versions in their entirety, so I had to limit the potential poems to those of usable length. Of course, I also want this presentation to not be overly long. I will read my version of the poem first, before ever listening to the author's version, and then that reading, after which I will compare the two and note such differences as exist. My choice fell on We Real Cool by the African-American poet Gwendolyn Brooks. This is her most famous poem, and as she herself has noted, I would prefer it if textbook compilers and anthologists would assume I had written a few other poems. The poem is short, only 32 words, and I was able to find a recording of Brooks reciting it herself. So, We Real Cool by Gwendolyn Brooks. The pool players, 7 at the Golden Shovel. We real cool, we left school, we lurk late, we strike straight, we sing sin, we thin gin, we jazz June, we die soon. Now I will play a version of We Real Cool, read by Gwendolyn Brooks herself.
The pool players, 7 at the Golden Shovel. We real cool, we left school, we lurk late, we strike straight, we sing sin, we thin gin, we jazz June, we die soon.
So there you go, two versions of Gwendolyn Brooks's We Real Cool. How do they compare? Let's begin with differences, of which I observe two major ones. My version is faster. At only 17 seconds, it is 6 seconds shorter than Brooks's version. This may not seem like much, only 6 seconds. However, it is a variation of 35% in length for this short poem. Also, Brooks is clearly emphasizing every one of her words, while I placed an emphasis on only the middle word of each 3-word sentence. Now, for similarities. To me, the major similarity is that we both carry the poem's halting physical structure into our readings. The placement of each we at the end of each line before continuing the sentence in the next is obviously an implicit reading instruction rather than the mere use of artistic license in arrangement. Also, while we varied in our speed of recitation, both readings were significantly slower than conversation. Timing myself reading the poem at my conversational speed resulted in only 11 seconds, a full 6 seconds off my recited version. My conclusions. Though I should be wary of extrapolating too far from the analysis of one poem, there is an implication that the proper recitation speed for a poem is definitely slower than that for ordinary conversation, if not extremely so. Also, the analysis was a worthy reminder to pay great, if not greater heed to the construction of a poem and its built-in identifications for pauses, such as line breaks, commas, or other punctuation. Finally, as to the variance in emphasis, it is another worthy reminder that one never knows the exact manner which the author considers as correct. That lack of knowledge itself perhaps justifies, or should justify, the latitude given to reinterpretations of works. This process has suggested another possible experiment on a grander scale, which would be to analyze the length of as many recitations of the poem, or any poem, and compare that average in total or by demographic against that of the author. Now that the experiment is concluded, I would like to mention the meaning of the poem. Directly from Brooks herself, the poem is a result of an actual incident rather than a complete creation. Upon seeing a group of young men skipping school at a pool hall, Brooks did not mentally condemn them for their absence from school, but instead merely wondered as to their thoughts on doing so. Were they rebelling? So she gives these possible thoughts, voiced by having them indulge in further vice, adding most notably a dose of self-awareness of the repercussions of their actions in the closing line, "We die soon." I thank you for your time, though not for your questions, as I am obviously attempting to avoid public speaking here. If I must, fine.